Hello, Year 7. It's Miss Cole here. This is your lesson 2. I am sorry that yesterday's lesson was transferred onto a Word document, but I couldn't work out how to do this. But I have worked it out now, so it's fine. All your lessons can be properly uploaded with sound so that the tasks can be explained to you, and timers so that you know how long to spend. Okay, so first things first today, open up your books and put down the title, November 9th. That is the title of the poem we'll be looking at today. And the date. So I put the date at Tuesday the 31st of March because that is the day I'm going to put it on ePraise. So put whatever date it is, underline the title and the date. And then you have got 4 sentences you need to write. So firstly, you need to give me the definition of the word literal. So think back to the lesson 1. Literal, what is the definition? Write out that definition. And then you've got 3 examples of metaphors. And what I would like you to do is explain the meaning of the phrase. And you have got 3 minutes. Off you go. Okay, so remember, if something is literal, it is accurate and precise. Something literal is accurate and precise. These 3 examples are not literal. They are all metaphors. So we've got number 1, life is a roller coaster. And that means that life has got many different events in it. Some are good, some are bad. Like a roller coaster, there are highs and there are lows. My teacher is a dragon. I'm sure none of you have ever said that, but some people might. So that sort of suggests that your teacher is quite loud, a bit scary, a bit fierce. And time is money means that time is valuable and you shouldn't waste it. So with your green pen, make any alterations that you need to, ready to move on. So metaphors are used by writers because they are a very good thing to use to help the reader to imagine something more clearly. So you might want to say that something's real quiet. So you might say it's really silent, and then the reader knows that it's silent. That's very literal. But if you changed it slightly, if you made it a metaphor and said it's as silent as a graveyard, the reader knows that there is something quite creepy and deathly about the silence. It gives it a much more mysterious, spooky tone. And the way metaphors work is by comparing two things. So it's as silent as a graveyard. The silence is compared to the silence that you experience in a graveyard. Two things are being compared to add meaning to that phrase. And you will have come across some of these. You will come across them in day-to-day speech. You'll use them all the time. You won't even know you're using it. If you tell someone that they're a star, then you are using metaphorical language. And something you will have probably been taught before are similes. And similes are obviously devices where you do compare two things. You use like or as, and they are a kind of metaphor. So we're not going to look at the sort of specific kinds of metaphor, but that umbrella of the term metaphor, and a simile is a kind of metaphor. So for each of these sentences, you need to decide if it is a metaphor or if it is literal. Okay, so for each metaphor, you then need to explain how the two things are being compared. So I've switched slide because I just want to show you how I would like you to lay it out. So draw a table in your book. It's not going to need to be very big, and have one column for metaphor and one column for literal. And you can see I've done the first one. I've given you an example. So I wandered lonely as a cloud. That's a line from a very famous poem. I is the subject here, and it is being compared to a cloud. That's the comparison. So go through. If it's literal, you don't need to write anything else. If it's a metaphor, explain which two things are being compared. I'm going to put 5 minutes on the timer for you to do that. Okay, so what you should have, number 2, sweat dribbled from his tense face. That is literal. That describes accurately what was happening. Number 3, as snug as a gun, the pen rested between my finger and thumb. Okay, so it is the pen that is being described, and it's a gun it's being compared to. Number 4, I could show you wonderful things. That is literal. That says it accurately. Number 5, the panther paces over and over like a ritual dance around a centre. Okay, so the panther is the thing being described, and it is being compared to a ritual dance. Number 6 is literal. Remembering my love, tears fall from my eyes. That is literal, it is accurate. And number 7, my love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. So that is a metaphor, and it's describing love as being like a rose. So what we're going to look at today is the way that we separate that metaphor, and we've already looked at that a little bit, those two bits, the bit that we are comparing and what we are comparing it to. They are the two parts that make up a metaphor. Part 1 is the thing you are trying to describe to your audience, to your reader. So if you think back to yesterday, we looked at the poem Fog, and it was fog that the writer was trying to describe. Part 2 is the imaginative idea that you compare it to help the audience understand. That's sort of the made up bit. So yesterday in that poem Fog, the imaginative idea was a cat. So fog was literally what was being described, but it was described as being like a cat to give that impression on how it creeps up on people. It's very nimble in its movements. It can approach quite quickly and unpredictably. Okay, but equally can move slowly to fill an area, so it's upon you before you realise. So part 1, fog, the literal idea. Part 2, the cat, the imaginative idea that you're comparing it to. So there we go. The fog comes on little cat feet. You can see part 1 and part 2 highlighted there. Part 1, part 2. So there are actual proper names for these two different parts of the metaphor. And part 1, that literal thing that you're trying to describe, that is the tenor. Okay, the tenor. Whereas part 2, the imaginative idea that you are comparing it to, that is the vehicle. So we have a think, what is the tenor and what is the vehicle in this example? Write out that sentence. It's highlighted the two parts of that metaphor. Write out the sentence and label 1 tenor and 1 vehicle. Okay, we're going to move on in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So for your next task, you are going to practice locating the tenor and the vehicle in a range of different metaphors. So there is an example here. Achilles fought like a lion. So there we've got the tenor is the literal thing. That is Achilles. Achilles. He is the real thing that the writer is trying to describe. And the vehicle is the imaginative idea. It's the thing that Achilles is being compared to. And in this case it is a lion. And once you've worked out what the tenor and the vehicle is, what I'd then like you to do is comment on what they have in common. Okay, so You look here, Achilles, lion. In this case, Achilles and the lion are both fierce, they're both strong, they're both brave. You could probably say a bit more. You could probably say they both induce fear in people, and they are dominant. Okay, so this is your list. I would like you to draw out the table and go through each of the different metaphors, find your tenor, find your vehicle, and then comment on what the tenor and vehicle have in common. I'm going to set a 5-minute timer for completion. Okay, get your green pen. Let's go through and have a look. So, your room is a pigsty. Your room is a pigsty. Your room is the tenor, and a pigsty is the vehicle, possibly to convey how it is chaotic, dirty, chaotic and dirty. The room was like a furnace. The tenor is the room, the furnace is the vehicle, and that would be to communicate how hot the room is. Robert is like a bull in a china shop. Okay, the tenor is Robert, the vehicle is a bull in a china shop, and that is to suggest that he is clumsy and careless, knocking things over left, right and centre, damaging things everywhere he goes. The eagle is like a bolt of lightning. The tenor is the eagle and the vehicle is the bolt of lightning, probably to show how fast it strikes. The room was as silent as a graveyard. The tenor is the room, the vehicle is a graveyard, to show that there is an eerie, lifeless silence in the room. She was volcanic with anger. She is the tenor and volcanic is the vehicle, to show how she's about to erupt with anger. Okay, so put those all in. So double check with your green pen that you've got them all correct. Correct any that are not right, and you can give yourself a tick for all the ones that are correct. So we are now going to read another very short poem. This time it is about the sound a leaf makes when it falls from a tree, and it's called November Night. So you will see in the poem there is one tenor and one vehicle, and what I would like you to identify is the tenor and the vehicle. So I'll read the poem and think about which is which as we go. Listen. With faint dry sound like steps of passing ghosts, the leaves, frost crisped, break from the trees and fall. By Adelaide Crapesley, 1878 to 1914. Okay, so what is the tenor and what is the vehicle? Hopefully you've worked out that the leaves are the tenor and passing ghosts are the vehicle. So like steps of passing ghosts, the leaves fall. So there are now three questions. I'm going to put these here. There we go. Three questions. So what I'd like you to think about is number one, what do ghosts make you think about? Consider how they look, how they sound, and what they are. What do ghosts have in common with the sound of leaves falling? And why do you think Crapesley has used this comparison? So I would like you to write your answer in full sentences. I'm going to put up a 5-minute timer for you to be completing your work. I do not expect just one sentence. I think you should be actually thinking about this in some depth and thinking about the significance of that metaphor. What is it suggesting about the leaves? Okay, 5 minutes, full sentences, perfect punctuation, off you go. Okay, grab a green pen and let's reflect on what you've done. So firstly, with your green pen, I just want you to check the accuracy of your work. So check, are there any run-on sentences? Does every proper noun begin with a capital? For example, if you've used the writer's name. Have you used pronouns clearly and accurately? And have you double checked your spellings? So have a couple of moments to read through your work, use your green pen and make any necessary corrections. Okay, now let's look at your answers. So number one, I imagine what you have is something along the lines of the idea that ghosts remind us of people who have died and are haunting us. They're usually very quiet, they are usually quite scary, and they don't walk generally. We think of them sort of gliding along the air, and maybe not being completely at rest yet. And leaves and ghosts are both very quiet, and they both possibly make a soft rustly sound. The leaves float like the ghosts float, and the leaves are silver because of the frost, and we tend to think of ghosts being a sort of silvery colour. I also think, going back to that point about ghosts are people who've died, well, actually, if a leaf is falling in November, it's a leaf that's died, so there's that connection too. And a ghost we think of as somebody who's not entirely at rest, and it's almost like that's how leaves are when they first fall in the autumn, that they're not quite ready to disappear yet, and you have all those leaves lingering around on the floor for weeks and weeks and weeks, until they sort of become part of the earth again. Sometimes they're in their final transition point when they're falling from the tree. And that extension that I actually encouraged you all to do was actually think about the writer's intention. Metaphors are a very deliberate thing. So an example answer could be that I think Crapesley might have compared ghosts and leaves, as it makes the poem seem quite spooky, so it affects the tone. You can imagine the leaves drifting just like ghosts drift. It is almost as if the leaves are haunting us. Perhaps it marks the death of summer as winter takes hold. So that final point, that's your really key metaphorical idea. Those leaves are the ghosts of summer. Okay, so have a look at your answers with your green pen. Add in any extra ideas that you didn't have. I'm sure you have lots of other excellent ideas that haven't been picked up in these answers. But for now, just have a couple of minutes with your green pen to add in any ideas. So your final activity of today, you've got the quiz. Which of the following are correct? A. The tenor is the literal part. It is the thing you want to describe to your audience. B. The vehicle is the literal part. It is the thing you want to describe to your audience. C. Metaphors compare two things that are different. D. A metaphor tells the literal thing that actually happened. Or E. In November night, the vehicle is the leaves. So write out the full sentence of any of those which are correct. Okay, now get your green pen. Let's have some answers. So you should have A and C. Give yourself a tick if you got them correct, but add in the correct answer if, unfortunately, on this occasion, you didn't get it right. So well done. Thank you for getting to the end of the lesson. Remember to take a photograph of your notes and upload them onto ePraise, and I will give ePraise points to everybody who has done a good job of those notes. If you've done it on a Word document, that's also fine. You can upload that. That's not a problem. And I will put the best ones onto Twitter this evening to show off how brilliant you all are. So thank you very much, and I'll be back again tomorrow.